Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
Clorox Scentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Scentiva. Available in Clorox Scentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
Have you heard of Olivia, the travel company for lesbians and LGBTQ plus women? You know what they say, life is short and the world is wide. And when you're a lesbian or LGBTQ plus woman, you want to be able to go on vacation, have some fun, feel safe, and be yourself. Olivia Travel creates full takeovers of their cruise, resort, riverboat, and adventure vacations so you can kiss who you want to kiss without a care in the world in your own safe space. Olivia also provides the entertainment, bringing comedians and musicians from within your community. Traveling by yourself? No problem. Olivia has a robust solos program so you can travel alone, together. Single, coupled up, or in a group, you'll meet amazing LGBTQ plus women who come from all walks of life, yet have so much in common. Join the thousands of Olivians who travel to bucket list destinations all over the world. It's life-changing to be in the majority on your own vacation. Discover Olivia for yourself at olivia.com today.
Lez hang out. Lez hang out. And let's talk about what Lez is about. And let's listen to two lesbians shout. Lez hang out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Lez Hang Out, the podcast where, don't you know, we're talking about a revolution. It sounds like a whisper. I was waiting for you to jump in, Ellie, on a whisper.
Thought that you could take it, you know,
And
I just
now
felt...
we will whisper the whole episode.
I
Let's
can't.
Hang Out ASMR podcast.
I can't do it.
From the West Coast, I'm Lee Holmes Foster.
From the East Coast, I'm Ellie Brigida. To those who've been with us through this whole journey, thank you as always for listening. If you're a new listener, welcome. We're excited to have you here. Here's what's happening this week.
This week in the Lesdom.
This week in the Lesdom is somewhere we can touch base each episode about things going on with the podcast or otherwise. We want to start with reminding you that we have Patreon bonus episodes going up on our Patreon. You can find them all. Our last one was on Amelia Perez. We had so many thoughts. And honestly, we're still looking for suggestions. If you have a movie or a show or something that you want to hear us talk about on a Patreon episode, we probably have one more coming out this season. So hit us up at lezhangoutpod@gmail.com. Let us know what you think we should talk about. We also want to remind you all that we are planning to go to France next March 2026, going to be from March 25th to 31st. We do still have some spots available. We're going to be planning to go to Paris and to Bordeaux. You can sign up at bit.ly/LesDoFrance. In other podcast news, we do want to let you all know, some of you may have noticed already, we are going to be changing the day that we release episodes. You've probably noticed we've come out the past few weeks on Tuesday, and that just happens to work a little bit better for our schedules lately, especially for Ellie's schedule in terms of getting all the edits done. So keep an eye out, new episodes going up every week on Tuesdays from here on out. Also, if you want to hear all of my thoughts on Yellow Jackets, and I had so many of them, you can catch them all on the episode that just came out of Big Gay Energy Pod. I got to sit down, have a whole conversation all about Yellow Jackets. We had a great time. You should definitely listen to Big Gay Energy Pod. I know we've done feed swaps with them before. They're a ton of fun. If you haven't checked out the podcast, you really should. In the greater Les universe, some of you may have seen that Chapel Roan guested on a TikTok series called Gaydar, got to talk a little bit about which album made her gay. The answer should surprise nobody. It is, of course, Jagged Little Pill. A great answer. Great answer to that question. I want to know everybody else's answers. Let us know what album made you gay. And finally, also in the Greater Lez universe, I just thought this was great. There is apparently something very relevant to my personal interests. It's called Lesbian Garros. It is a lesbian tennis tournament and club that is in Spain. So if someone wants to take me to Spain to go play tennis with a bunch of lesbians, hit me up. I'm down anytime. Let's go. That's what's happening this week. Back to you, Ellie and Lee. Thanks, Ellie and Lee. We are so excited to bring you episode 17 of season 8, The Dark Gay-ges. Huh? And we are excited to be joined by a very special guest today. We have Eric Marcus, who's the host of the award-winning Making Gay History podcast, also the executive director of the Making Gay History nonprofit organization, the co-producer of the podcast, Those Who Were There, and the author or co-author of a dozen books, including Breaking the Surface, the autobiography of diving champion Greg Louganis. Eric, thanks for being here.
Delighted to be with you. All the way from the East Coast to you on the West Coast, where I used to live for 3 years, 4 months, and 9 days.
Wow.
That's
That
so
is like a
specific.
really specific count. Yeah. Where'd you live out here?
I lived on Filbert and Hyde on the steepest street in the city. It was a novelty street. Yeah, my friends had bet on how long I would last as a New Yorker living in San Francisco, so I kept track.
You have like the exact hour count?
I do, and they were taking bets on how long I'd last, and I lasted longer than they expected, and it was longer than it was good for me or for my ex. He stayed. I came back.
So wait, when were you in San Francisco? Like what years, and why is it so difficult? I have never lived in San Francisco. I'm an East Coast girl. What's so difficult about living in San Francisco compared to New York?
Well, and I'm an East Coast boy.
Yeah,
I lived
feel
there
you.
from 1989 to 1992, so arrived in time for the big quake in '89, and it was just very different. It's a different culture. I grew up in a very Jewish Eastern European community, and the Jewish community of San Francisco was, it's not nice to say, but I used to say it was deracinated, meaning that the Jews who'd lived there had lived there a long, long time. So it wasn't an Eastern European culture. So it felt like, even though everyone spoke English, it was a different culture. And I was also at a different moment in my career where I felt like I was moving from the center of everything. I was writing books and I had a lot of success, and stepped off the big conveyor belt into a community where the writers who got together would talk about, what are you doing? Are you hiking this weekend?
So you're not an outdoorsy gay. I get it.
I love hiking, but it's like, I'm working this weekend. What else do you do on the weekend?
Okay, that makes sense. It's like the slower pace. It's a little slower pace.
But it's a beautiful city. The hiking is incredible. I have dear friends who live there, and before COVID was there usually once a year. I haven't been in about 2 years this time, but it's a wonderful city.
Do you still keep the running counter when you're here? You know, I'm picturing you like scratching marks in the wall, like another day down.
No. It's been enough time since I moved, which is over 30 years ago, that I'm always happy when the plane lands there, and I'm always happy to come home.
back.
Yes,
It makes sense.
Yes.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It is a big deal when that plane makes it through the fog. You know, it's
and
worth
it's really
celebrating.
terrifying when you're descending and descending and descending. You're thinking,
Yeah.
Okay, where's the runway?
Where's the earth?
Where's the earth? And then you come out of the clouds and you land. It's wild. But we have that here on the East Coast too. I've landed at LaGuardia sometimes when you know you're either going to crash or you're going to land in the water.
Well, and Ellie, you've got that Boston. That's always one of my favorite approaches when you fly into Boston and you're just like, water landing.
Yes.
Still around.
Yes.
There's always that brief, and I've done it so many times at this point, and you're just like, there's always that slight moment where you're like, wait, are we going to make it? Okay, fine. Okay, it's good.
Yeah.
Love that dirty water.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you do.
Well, Eric, let's talk a little bit about Making Gay History.
Yes.
So when you got started with Making Gay History quite a while ago, how did you get started?
We launched the podcast 9 years ago, but the origin story goes back to 1988 when I was commissioned to write a book we called Making History because the publisher was afraid of using the word gay in the title. I guess they were concerned that the sales force would have trouble selling it and that bookstores wouldn't want to put it face out. So we put the words gay and lesbian in the subtitle, smaller print. So I was commissioned to write a book, and for that book, I interviewed 89 people across the U.S. who were involved in some aspect of the movement. And in 88, 89, the dinosaurs still walked the earth. The people who founded our movement were still alive for the most part. So I got to sit with people who are legendary, from Chuck Rowland and Phyllis Lyon and Del Martin, Barbara Giddings and Kayla Husen, Frank Kameny, Dr. Evelyn Hooker. I mean, just go on down the line. It was an extraordinary experience. And I used broadcast quality equipment to record all the interviews. I'd come from CBS News, where my boss had worked at NPR and created Morning Edition and Weekend Edition. So I asked him when I started my work, after I left CBS, I said, what equipment do your colleagues use at NPR? So I figured someday someone might want to mine my archive for their work, not knowing that I would mine my archive. But fast forward to 2008, I donated my entire collection to the New York Public Library with an agreement that they digitize everything. And by then I'd done a number of books and had hundreds of hours of recordings. And then fast forward again to 2015, I was fired from my job at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and had to figure out what to do as a 55-year-old journalist at a time when no one was going to hire me. And I had this collection, and the New York Public Library had just digitized it. And to make a long story short, I enlisted my neighbor, Sarah Birmingham, who's a brilliant audio producer who now produces the Amicus podcast for Slate. I asked Sarah if she could cut some tape for a small education project. I was friends with the founders of History Unerased, an organization. This is the short version of the story, by the way.
No, I honestly, please tell us it all. It's so fascinating.
No, this is the short story. I met the founders of History Unerased, an organization that develops curriculum materials, LGBTQ inclusive American history materials. And we decided that Making Gay History would provide them with 6-minute clips to anchor their lessons. And so I enlisted my neighbor, Sarah Birmingham, who literally I met looking out my kitchen window into her backyard. And she had worked at the BBC and at NPR in Arkansas, and asked her if she could cut tape. And she said yes. And she started working on 2 pieces and got down to about 18 minutes and said, this sounds like a podcast. But she said, I don't know how to make a podcast. So I'm going to podcast school. So over Labor Day weekend in 2016, Sarah went to podcast school here in New York. And at the end of the long weekend, they invited in some podcast people, including Jenna Weiss Berman, who was then with Pineapple Street Studios, the hottest young podcast production company in America. And Jenna, who's a lesbian, loved what we were doing and said, how can I help? And 5 weeks later, literally 5 weeks later, we launched the podcast with a fully fledged website, with full transcript, with archival photos and episode notes, and did a 10-episode season and did what everyone said you can't do. So we hired a composer. We did all of it in 5 weeks. Yeah. So that's how we got launched.
I love how similar this is, Ellie, to our starting a podcast where we had a phone call once and we're like, we should make a podcast. That's it's exactly the same. It's so similar. It's, like I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah, I don't recommend it.
That is crazy to do, especially because the amount of work that your particular kind of show takes
a lot
is so much.
It is
cutting all of the interviews and that is so much to do in 5 weeks.
The season we're doing now, we've been working on for 2 years.
Completely different. Yeah, you're and now we take our time.
Yeah, I also co-produce a podcast with the Fortune Video Archive for Holocaust Testimonies, and when they hired us to do that work, independent of Making Gay History, we spent 2 years in development, and we could have done it in a year, and that's about 6 months to a year is a good amount of time, not 5 weeks. But we had an agreement. I had a grant from the Arcus Foundation, and the agreement with that grant was that we had to have something out by October of 2016. And we had already had a deal with Out Magazine, which was still, I guess it's still around. I don't know. It was a magazine, and they had a website, and we had a deal with them to provide them with the short clips for LGBTQ History Month. And we pivoted quickly to doing the podcast instead. So that's why we had to have it out then.
That is so wild.
But we only expected to have one season.
And how many seasons do you have now? There's 8 question mark?
No, there's
14.
This
is season 14.
It's higher than that.
More than 100 episodes, 6.5 million episode downloads in 200 countries and territories around the world. Yeah.
That is wild.
It's wild.
And what do you feel has changed from season 1 to now, besides the length of the length of time it takes you to do it.
A lot of things have changed. We would never have done the kind of season we're doing now, which is not based on my archive. So most of our seasons are drawn from my archive. This series on the experiences of LGBTQ people during the rise of the Nazi regime, World War II, and the Holocaust is drawn from archives around the world. And because a number of the recorded testimonies are in other languages, we had to hire actors to do voiceover. And I mean, it's a really complex series for production, so that it's not complex for the listener. So it's very different from what we did at the beginning. And also, I can hear things that I couldn't hear at first. It's it's very different writing books from doing a podcast. And I'm much more experienced. I feel like I have a much better sense when I listen to something, what I like, what I don't like. I'm not the one who actually cuts tape. Sarah, my founding producer, early on, I said, Sarah, do you think I should go learn how to edit? And she essentially said, you're too old.
I can't teach an old dog kind of thing.
Well, no, she said you can, because she had 20 some odd years experience already as a radio producer. I couldn't get 20 years of experience as a radio producer. So it made more sense for me to hire people who could do it and to be the person to go out and raise the money and build the nonprofit organization and do all the things that I can do, and to be the face of and the host of, but to have people who knew what they were doing as opposed to me. And at the beginning, it was interesting. Sarah edited by sound, by listening, and I would edit by transcript. And I very quickly learned that I had to listen as I looked at the printed transcript because, of course, you can't edit in print the way you can't edit in audio the way you do in print based on the intonation and where things land. As you know from the work you do. I'm just knocking something over here.
It's okay. I don't know if we want to dive into this at this early juncture, but I feel like we're here. Why Nazis? What's the relevance of this particular season?
Well, we decided on this completely independent of the current political situation when we had the rise of the Nazi regime here at home. I had wanted to do a series like this for a long time. I have because of my work with the Fortunoff Archive, a great interest in Holocaust history. Also in my growing up with my neighbors and friends. I have a lot of friends whose parents were Holocaust survivors. And my curiosity was sparked back in '89 when I interviewed Richard Plant, who wrote the second book on the experiences of gay men during the Holocaust. But I needed to wait until we had enough experience with the podcast and that we had enough resources, the funds, and the time to do it. So actually 3 years ago, I first hired a researcher to begin looking around to see if there was enough out there to explore this area that's not well known. And certainly it hasn't been done as an audio documentary before. And if there's been anything, it's about gay men. And we want to look at the full spectrum of experience for LGBTQ people, not just people in concentration camps, but also people in the resistance and people who just got swept up for whatever reason. One of my favorite stories is Frida Belafonte, who was a lesbian in the Netherlands, who was a concert. She was a cellist, a professional cellist. She was a conductor, had her own small orchestra or chamber group. She became a resistance fighter and ultimately led or helped lead, although they didn't let the women participate directly, in an operation blowing up a section of the city hall in Amsterdam. It's a long story, which you can hear about in the podcast. So it was really because it wasn't anything going on in the outside world. It was my interest in this subject. And it is a complete coincidence and a really unfortunate coincidence that we began releasing the series at around the same time that we're facing the rise of a fascist, and that's not even a rise anymore. We are living with a fascist regime that is targeting the most vulnerable among us and using some of the very same tactics that were used in 1933. It's chilling.
It's quite terrifying. Yeah. I will say, I have a lot of Middle Eastern friends in Boston, and we were talking about this the other day. It feels like we're in a World War II movie to me.
Yep.
When I'm talking to my friends, and they're oh yeah, we're having a going away party for my friend on Saturday because he's not safe here, has to go home.
Yeah, I was talking with a friend today who's trans and is from Singapore, travels a lot, is a very successful journalist here, but has canceled all travel because she's afraid she won't be allowed back in the U.S. if she leaves. She has a green card, but I'm going to London next week, and my husband is a little concerned. And I said, so far they're not sending old white gay men to El Salvador. But what if they decide
but
to?
there's always that sort of yet at the end of that at the moment, which is
not
great.
If they look at my
great.
phone or my website, if they look at the Nazi series where I make a direct connection between what was going on there and what's going on here.
Yeah.
But so far, not yet. Not yet.
But I do feel like, I don't know, the thing that's interesting, I think, particularly about your show is also like, we talk about history in general, usually with books and stuff like that. The fact that we're hearing real people, real stories, like their actual voices and their interviews, it's just crazy to be like, okay, and now we are those voices also.
Yeah. And
like,
those voices from
wild.
the past are so powerful. It's very different from reading the stories. So I've done this as a book with all of these stories, but it's two-dimensional. You can't convey the same amount of information in a print oral history as you can in a spoken oral history where people speak in their own voices with their accents and their vocabulary. I remember interviewing Wendell Sayers, who was 86 at the time I interviewed him in 1989, so that he grew up in the teens, was sent to the Mayo Clinic when he was 16. His father thought he might be a homosexual. He was diagnosed as a homosexual in 1919. And just the way he spoke, the quality of his voice, the words he used, his intonation, takes you back in time. It's time travel.
Yeah.
Sylvia Rivera, whose voice I hadn't heard in 30 years when I first started working on the podcast. Oh my God, that's quite it's incredible Bronx accent. And you don't get that in print.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it is so cool and just like so rich.
Well, and
to hear
it's
all that.
multidimensional. It's not just three-dimensional, it's multidimensional. And there's something about the quality of the human voice that really touches us in a way that printed words don't. And also because of the technology, no one can see us because we're on a podcast, but you're wearing headphones, you're wearing earbuds, I'm wearing earbuds, so that the sound that we hear sounds like it's coming from the middle of our heads, so that it's a very intimate experience. So when you have someone talking to you from out of the past, someone who's no longer living, and they're telling you about stories, things they lived through during the Holocaust, it's much more profound than reading.
I think it's like Ellie and I met through a cappella. Actually, we both did a lot of, do a lot of music, did a cappella. And I think it's one of the things, like when I've tried to explain to people, because a cappella is a pretty niche thing sometimes. And like when you try to explain to people who are not into it that much, and they're like, why a cappella? And I've always just said, I'm like, there is something about humans singing, like human voices. There is something to me that I find just really powerful about a person's voice. Like, human voices. I'm like, I'm not like anti-instrument and whatever. We do a lot of instrumental stuff now, but I'm like, there's just something that I've always found really, like more intimate. There's a different type of connection, I think, that we have to the voices of other people above a lot of other sounds, and I think that like queer people in a general sense, there's a lot of ways in which our histories sometimes feel farther away for us, and so I think that like getting that extra sort of level of like the humanity,
it brings it close. It brings it close, and you can hear the pain in people's voices, you can hear the joy in people's voices, and when you conduct an oral history or an oral history interview, you do help people go back in time. And sometimes, even though the voices are old, you can hear the child in the voice. I was just talking with an interviewer from the Holocaust Museum in Washington who interviewed the guy whose story we end the 12-part series with. He's 88 years old when he gives his testimony. And she is asking him about when he was raped as a teenager and sexually abused. And as he recounts what he lived through and then talks about how it wasn't as bad talking about it as he thought it might be and how he lost sleep over it. And you can hear the child in this 88-year-old man's voice. It also, I think we're wired fundamentally as human critters to respond to the voice. And some
Not
of them,
not my kids, but yes, I think in a general sense, that does hold true most of the time.
I'm sorry.
Do you feel like, do you feel like too, there's like as you say, respond to, there's like a empathy that you can create a bit better when you hear the voice?
Sure. Yeah, because you can hear, I'll give you an example. Dr. Evelyn Hooker, who conducted the first study comparing gay men to straight men, which was published in 1956. It was revolutionary, especially for a woman psychologist. She was not exactly welcome in the first place in her work. At one point, she gets choked up talking about a young woman who wrote to her and said, "Because of your study, you saved me from electroconvulsive therapy." And as she's telling that story, you can hear her voice her voice gets shaky, and then you hear her get, she doesn't quite, almost cries, but it's very subtle. And all I could do in the book was where she said, "Excuse me while I cry." Well, that's flat. That's just excuse me while I type it in. But when you hear it, it affects you. You get emotional too, because you can feel the emotion in her voice. Yeah, there's so much you can do with sound, with a podcast, or as I call it, radio on demand. It's audio. It's so rich by comparison. And I often get asked, "Am I going to write another book?" It's like, after this, why would I ever go back to print?
I feel like there's also like a big part of it too of like, I mean, you would know better than me because you do more of the history, but our own voices telling our own stories, right? Prior to you writing this book or you making these podcasts, like how often were our own voices telling our own stories?
Rarely.
Yes.
Rarely. Like never. It certainly, when I was growing up, there was never. I didn't even know gay people existed until I was 17 years old. So,
how did you realize they existed?
Because my neighbor who I fell in love with told me he was gay.
Wow, that's a good.
Yeah.
That's like a 1-2 punch for us.
I know.
For a
I was like,
17-year-old.
that's a good. Yeah, you're like, oh shit, you are gay, and I guess I am too.
Yeah. that's a world-shattering level of.
It was, but in a good way.
Oh yeah,
in a really good way.
Was that your first relationship or no?
I wished it to be. It was my first experience. But poor Bob was terrified. He was 23, I was 17, so he was really afraid of getting caught. But what I would have had to explain was that this wasn't his idea. He tried running in the other direction, and I chased him down and dragged him home.
Makes sense.
I was a very aggressive 17-year-old.
I like this storyline that like you didn't know what gay was, but once you figured it out, you were like, "Oh yes, I am in 100%."
Yeah.
Like 120%. Yeah. He didn't know. He didn't know what hit him. But I did know that. I did know that something called a homosexual existed. I just hadn't met one, because when I was like 15 or 14, there was a show called Medical Center with a star named Chad Everett. My sister was in love with Chad Everett. And they had a storyline on one show where there was another doctor who was homosexual. And he said, "But I'm not the kind you can tell." And he was going to get treatment. And that was the first time I ever saw anything depicted about homosexuals, which will really screw you up.
Yeah, well, I feel like too, I mean, we talk a lot about representation, like in the media, right? Of LGBTQ people. And like, now media is so different.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like there are certain things that will hit you when you are a teenager that really that will stick with you.
Yeah, I have watched Heartstopper, that wonderful series.
Yes.
And sometimes, and my husband and I watched it together, and we're not exactly teenagers. We've often commented, what would our lives have been like if we had seen that and known that we could have a life? When I was a young person, my first book, The Male Couple's Guide to Living Together, the subtitle had a tagline, "In a world where everyone says it can't possibly last." So I grew up at a time when people didn't believe that people like us had lasting relationships. And then when I did my work, my books, certainly with Making Gay History, I met people who'd been in relationships for decades. And then I did a book called Together Forever, Gay and Lesbian Couples Share Their Secrets for Lasting Happiness. And I interviewed couples who'd been together from 9 to 50 years. So people, against all odds, were living the kind of life that I wanted. But the popular conception was, especially for gay men, that we were predators, and now it's called groomers. I always joke that gay men have always been into grooming, but we groom ourselves, not others. But representation now is, and there's such a broad range of representation now. And I found that in the people I interviewed who lived, especially when I did the long-term couples book. I interviewed 20 lesbian couples and 20 male couples across the U.S., and it was unbelievable going into people's homes and seeing how they lived and having them tell me their stories.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to cry thinking about that. Lee has been married for a long time.
How many years?
I've been a little bit. Yeah, we got married. It'll be 14 years this summer.
Wow.
You could have been in the book, Lee.
I could have been. If only I had been married for 14 years.
The sequel.
A couple decades ago.
Yeah, we got married in December.
Yeah, round 2 when you want to make a podcast. Oh, congrats.
Yeah, thank you. We got married on the 31st anniversary of when we met.
Wow.
That is so beautiful.
Yes. And our friends, we have friends who are throwing us a big wedding party on Saturday.
That's amazing.
After we go to one of the big national protests.
Yeah, there you
yes,
go. Well, that's
perfect.
I was gonna ask not to bring down the mood of your joyous nuptials, but it was that a quick get this in before the administration, because I have a lot of queer friends who have been doing that recently. Who that I feel like that December January was ripe with gay weddings.
Yes, it was. It was inspired by the election, and also our house was flooded in September. We were living in hotels for a while, and then in a temporary apartment. And with all that upheaval and disruption, we decided it was time. It was time. Yeah. It was very sweet to get married.
I mean, I feel like I shouldn't say taking away from it, because honestly, queer joy is resistance. So
it is.
More power to all of us.
And I used to be, until very recently, uncomfortable referring to, didn't refer to my partner as my husband because we weren't married. And the idea of using the word husband made me a little uncomfortable. And now it feels like an act of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And I use it all the time. I find opportunities to say my husband so that I'm very clearly, because also now that I'm old, people don't think that old people are gay. They don't. They see the two of us on the street. They think we're two old men helping each other across the street. So I really like to make sure people know that I am gay and that I have a husband.
Yes, because having a full gay history podcast means like nobody knows.
Well, it's a voice. They don't know they don't know what I look like. That's true.
I do find that so funny though. Like, please just scream it from the rooftops.
I think you should make him a hat, like a custom embroidered.
Like, I'm
husband.
With my husband.
Right.
Husband hat.
Yes. I'm with my husband. Occasionally, I've had people say, "You sound familiar."
Nice. You're like, yes, I love that. In the vein of the queer joyous resistance.
Yes.
What are some of the stories that you've heard that center around queer joy? Because, a lot of stuff. I feel like people can be like, history is like depressing, and also
so much,
history is so much more than that, right?
Barbara Giddings and Kayla Husen were the happy warriors of the movement. They were among those who planned the first marches in front of the White House in 1965. One of my favorite stories about them was from 1971, when they went to the American Library Association convention. Barbara was very interested in books because she found herself first in a novel called The Well of Loneliness, published in 1928. It was about a lesbian relationship. And so she became very involved with the American Library Association. And in 1971, they rented a booth on the floor of the convention center in Dallas. They prepared a bibliography of all of the positive gay books that had been published up to that point, filled 2 sides of a legal sheet of paper. They taped the bibliography all over the convention center, in the elevators. They had in their booth, they had a table with the bibliographies. It's a typical convention center floor where they had the curtains in their booth, and nobody paid any attention. So they decided that they would do something to get some attention. So they created a booth for Hug a Homosexual, and had a big sign.
The kissing booth.
They had basically a kissing booth. And they wound up on the evening news. They wound up on the morning news. They got so much attention, and the people who planned the convention were very upset because all the famous authors were there. And No one paid any attention to the famous authors. All they wanted to talk about was the kissing booth. And at the
That
time,
is so funny.
visibility was key because so few people had ever seen a homosexual. And also no one would come into the booth for hugs. So Barbara and Kay Barbara hugged one of the famous authors, Alma Rautsong, on her side, and a couple of the guys hugged on the other side who were with the organization. They found ways to have so much fun in changing the world. And I said, and Barbara said at one point in the interview, she said, what would my life have been like if I'd been straight? It would have been dark and dreary and depressing. Instead, I got to do, these incredible things and change the world. And I think we can be revolutionaries and have a lot of fun doing it. I love the humor that comes out of the LGBTQ community. It's lots of fun to poke fun at the people who poke fun at or tease us. And it's a great way to go back at people with humor. I used to do this all the time when my books were first published. I'll give you one example. You haven't asked, but I'm giving you an example.
It's okay, I want it.
So I was on one of those morning drive time shows for, I think it was for my long-term couples book or my gay Q&A book. And it was a classic drive time show with one of the hosts was a former football player, and they were guys and they were in ties. It was sort of olden days. And they were being jokey about gay men and what we were like. And I said, to one of the guys who was wearing a tie, I said, that's a really tasteful tie. And I would guess you're a gay guy just based on the tie you're wearing because you have such good taste. And he's a big, burly guy. He laughed uncomfortably.
That's so funny.
And once I was interviewed by Bill O'Reilly, the conservative host, formerly of Fox, and I teased him as he was saying how being gay was a choice. This is a long time ago now. And I said, well, Bill, you could have sex with a man. You might not like it. I can have sex with a woman. I might not like it, but we can do it. And again, sort of uncomfortable laughter. So teasing goes a long way, especially when you're trying to disarm people who were, and he was brighter than he came across. He was not a stupid person. He was he created a character. So yeah, I think humor is very effective, and joy is essential.
For sure. Well, also it's just like, it's also, I think, like you have to keep the fuel going to continue the work that you're going to do. But yes,
especially at times like this where it feels very discouraging.
But I do love that. I'm like, I feel like I always say that to my friends. I'm like, you look so gay today. And I'm like, it's a compliment. Yes. You look so gay in the best way. Or like, actually sometimes my brother's straight and it's
okay.
Great. I know exactly. That's what I say to him too.
Yeah.
But sometimes like he will dress up and he'll be like, I look gay, right? Like, and he's like, he wants to look gay. He's like, I want to look like I'm put together.
Yeah.
Like I intentionally put together this outfit. I'm like, yes, you look so gay.
It makes it very hard for people like me with your generation to figure out who's gay and who's not.
It's so, honestly, it's hard for us.
It is.
Jesus Christ, it's so hard.
Well, to be fair, here's the problem. Straight people, period. But the problem is straight people constantly, as we say all the time, we're like, queer people just better looking, smarter, better dressed, funnier, more talented, whatever. I feel like they constantly are seeing queer people sort of like killing it, and then they decide to copy us, and then we're like, okay, but that makes it real tricky.
And then we have to move on.
If you don't want us to think you're all gay, so like stop doing that because
it is funny. It is funny.
Especially for the lesbians, because it's like I feel like straight dudes are a little don't want to come across as gay necessarily, so they're a little more careful about it.
Yeah.
Straight girls out here,
they don't care.
Wildin'. They are just crazy, and we're like, you look like a straight up dyke. Like, I don't know how to explain to you that the things you are copying are not
wearing Birkenstocks. You have a side shave.
Yeah. Like,
we don't know what to do with you.
Stop painting your one ring finger a different nail polish color than the red. Like, you're flagging, and it's frustrating us, okay? It's like, stop doing that. That's not a cute, Instagram trend. Stop it.
Well, it was like when straight guys started wearing earrings. It's like, how can you tell who's gay and who's not?
Yeah.
Wait, so, okay, historically, is that is a thing? there's the gay ear.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember
Right?
which is which anymore. Oh, I'll tell you one funny story. My late ex
The right ear was
gay.
the gay one.
Oh, okay.
Because
Yeah.
it was, I remember even from when I was in high school, it was like left is right. If you don't want people to think you're gay, like you pierce your left ear.
And now guys wear earrings in both.
Yeah.
So my late ex came to New York from the Central Valley of California, and he was at a bar. He told me this story later, and he had a white handkerchief in his back pocket. And there was a whole code for handkerchiefs about what kind of sex people liked. Code I never really understood until I read about it one day. And he said, some guy sidled up to him and said, "So, what does a white handkerchief in your left back pocket mean?" And he said, I said to the guy, "Hay fever?" He was a real innocent in the big city.
Cute though.
Yeah,
Cute.
That
it's
is
cute.
very cute.
It's very
Yes.
cute, very charming. Yeah.
But yes, it is. I feel like in a way things were simpler when you knew the rules.
It was in a way simpler. It is true. It is true. There were rules about what you did, how you behaved, gender roles more. I'm not saying these are better. This was better. It was clearer.
Now it's messy gay chaos out there.
It is, and gender identity is
Yeah.
complicated and chaos. That's something we didn't. It was not an issue at all growing up. And I remember the first time I was left a meeting, and one of my colleagues at the company that I was meeting at, who I thought was a lesbian, said, "I just want to let you know that I've come out as non-binary." This is many years ago now. And I said, I had presence of mind to say, "That's great. Thank you for telling me. I really appreciate that." And then I had to call some of my younger friends too before I found one who knew what that was. And then I found out what that was.
You know what, though? That's good on you to be like, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you learn.
You have
Of
trusted me with a
course.
piece of information that I will now promptly research. Thank
Yes.
you.
And try not to say something really stupid
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
interim. Yeah.
Yes, you've been in the gay community for long enough to know.
A
Yeah.
lot. So
That you need-
next year, it will be 50 years since I came out.
Wow. What anniversary is that? 50 is what, gold?
50 is, I think it's gold.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotta celebrate.
Yeah,
you
You
should
gotta
get
do
yourself-
it right. Do a party.
I should give Bob a call, my next door neighbor, who's
Yeah.
who's now
Find
he'll be
Bob.
70. He would be 73 next year. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's wild.
He had a gold rainbow.
And he's alive.
Pin,
He's alive,
never-
which is not the case
Yeah.
for most of the people of my generation.
Honestly, who do we talk to at the council to send out, like, yeah, you need like a little gold rainbow pin to
Commemorative, yeah.
right? Who,
No, or
who
the-
sends those out?
or the-
Like,
or-
is it the same committee that does the toasters?
I-
We need like.
I was just you stepped on my line about toasters.
I'm so sorry. Take it again. Say it. We'll cut it. We'll
That's
edit.
okay. That was the Ellen DeGeneres joke about the toaster. I interviewed her for the second edition of my book in 2000
Wow.
Wow.
when she was in between careers and things were really rough.
So you're saying it would be the silver anniversary of that? We're gonna get you all the pins. We're gonna get you as
Of
many
Ellen.
commemorative
Yes.
anniversary pins as we can. you
Yes, yes.
know? Incredible.
Have you heard of Olivia, the travel company for lesbians and LGBTQ plus women? You know what they say, life is short and the world is wide. And when you're a lesbian or LGBTQ plus woman, you want to be able to go on vacation, have some fun, feel safe, and be yourself. Olivia Travel creates full takeovers of their cruise, resort, riverboat, and adventure vacations so you can kiss who you want to kiss without a care in the world in your own safe space. Olivia also provides the entertainment, bringing comedians and musicians from within your community. Traveling by yourself? No problem. Olivia has a robust solos program so you can travel alone, together. Single, coupled up, or in a group, you'll meet amazing LGBTQ plus women who come from all walks of life, yet have so much in common. Join the thousands of Olivians who travel to bucket list destinations all over the world. It's life-changing to be in the majority on your own vacation. Discover Olivia for yourself.
Oh man, I'm also
Olivia.com
just
today.
thinking like it's just crazy. I don't know, just thinking about like current times stuff like this. Like, do you feel that history is linear or cyclical? I know that's like a very deep.
Wow.
Question
That's
to
like
ask.
we took a jump, Ellie.
I think
I know, I'm
it's-
sorry, but I was just thinking about Ellen. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, she was so blacklisted and then she was so revered and then she sort of still is now sort of back on the like
again.
not
Yeah.
right, and it's like
I think that history does fold back on itself, and it's cyclical, and there are echoes. And I think a lot about the fall of the Roman Empire these days, or the fall of, or the rise and fall of the Third Reich. That humans seem not to learn from the past, that our memories are short, and now that the generation that lived through World War II is mostly gone, we're going to make some of the same exact mistakes all over again. That we are, as a species, incapable of learning from the past and seem determined to destroy ourselves. And I don't think it's a majority of us who do that, but that there are enough to bring down this fragile world that we've created. Yeah. So
I mean, to be fair, I think there are many crazy, MAGA conservative fascists right now who are learning very, very admirably from the past. They're doing all the right fascist things to bring down a democracy.
And it's so simple, that it's that creating and maintaining a democracy is extremely complex. And as we're seeing, destroying one is
easy.
Exceedingly easy.
And using the same kinds of tactics. You pick a vulnerable minority group, you demonize them, and it's not just in the Western world we've seen this. I was in Rwanda several years ago, went to their Holocaust museum. Oh my God. It was the most efficient genocide ever in the history of the world, and it was done by hand. More efficient than the Germans. And I'm very close to a Rwandan family, a young family, and you can see the damage to the parents' generation, who are my age, and the generation after. It's a problem. We need a software upgrade, and we're not going to get it. But I feel like it's still incumbent on us to record history, to share history, in the hope that people will learn, that we will pay attention to some of the warnings that the people have provided for us in this series that we've just done with Making Gay History. They are telling stories that we need to listen to, and that we can't just sit by and wait. Waiting and not responding is not the answer.
Are there things that you would say, because obviously, I mean, you said you started work on this obviously before the election, before this, before the
3 years ago,
current cluster we have found ourselves in. Are there things that you feel more aware of that you think you maybe wouldn't have been if you hadn't just spent so much time kind of like doing all of this research, kind of going back and like re-examining all of this stuff before it's now happening here?
I was aware of a lot of it. What this has done is heightened my anxiety. One issue that comes up over and over again in these interviews, both in my podcast for the Fortune Video Archive for Holocaust Testimonies and now for Making Gay History, is when do you leave? When do you stay and fight, and when do you leave? And I have much more empathy for the older people who said, and these were stories told by their children, usually, who were the survivors, because the parents and grandparents didn't. The older people said, well, how can I leave? I don't speak I don't speak any other language. This is my home. This is my family and friends. And this will blow over. We've been through hard times before. This in 1933, it wasn't the Holocaust. That didn't happen for years. And it was the ones who left early who were the most likely to survive. But even when bad things started happening, people couldn't believe that it was going to happen to them. And so my husband and I have talked about this a lot. And we just spent a couple of weeks in Uruguay where we're applying for permanent residency. So if we had to leave, we would. But when is too late? Might we reach the point where they take our passports away, or they won't, or we can't transfer money? And these are the things that happen to people, and they got stuck, and then got lucky if they could climb over the mountains, the Alps to Switzerland in the snow, which Frida Belafonte, the Dutch resistance fighter, did in the end to get away from the Gestapo. I don't know. It raises so many questions. I have so much empathy and better understanding having now heard these stories, and here I still feel a little frozen.
It's hard. I mean, it's like it's also hard because I do think queer people right now are a little more aware and conscious of some of this than I think a lot of
well, we're a target.
cis straight folks are
at
the moment.
Yeah.
But it's like the number of conversations that I've had with straight people where I'm like, this is an impossible choice to me. I'm like, I have kids, I have young kids. I'm like, the decision of like, is it better to leave? Is that just disrupting my kid's entire life for no reason? Like, we own a house. I'm like,
you can't just pick up and go.
It's not that easy to just, and also like, it's not completely straightforward to just sort of move to another country, like willy-nilly,
Yes,
like, there's
you can't just, because people don't want us.
Like, why would they? We're not doing great, And so it's like, it's hard, but it's like, I talk to a lot of straight people these days who like don't seem to understand how seriously queer people are currently asking these questions within our communities, within our like families, relationships.
We haven't had our rights for that long.
Yeah.
So it's recent history.
We really have not. I mean, we talked about this in a previous episode. Like, literally, my girlfriend's younger than me, and at one point she was like, she like forgot that gay marriage was ever illegal, kind of. And I was like, huh? Like, like I vividly remember the day that it happened.
Yeah, I was born into a world where sex between people of the same sex was illegal. I was born into the Eisenhower administration, and he had signed an executive order banning gay people from federal employment. It's, on and on and on. We had no protections in employment or accommodations. Very different world. And you could have lost your kids. I've interviewed people who've lost their kids who, in the olden days. So we have more to worry about. We have a history, and we can certainly sound the alarm in a way that straight people can't or don't know, because they've been lulled into a sense that this can't possibly happen to them.
That's what I think part of the problem is it's not just the fact that we are more aware and we're more like currently in the crosshairs. I think also we have a better sense of, most of us still, I mean, obviously there's an age threshold below which probably less so, but I think most of us have a pretty good sense of like not having rights.
Yeah.
And knowing how easily that just happens, and then they're not there, you don't have them, or didn't have them, or like, I feel like there is this sense of, I think for Americans especially, this sense of like, no, we're in these innate, inalienable rights that like...
Yeah, they can't just pick us up off the street and send us to El Salvador. They'd never do that.
That'd be crazy. That'd be so crazy.
That happens to somebody else. But then they pick up your neighbor.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, it's very like indicative of the Holocaust, right? It's like they came for these people, and I didn't,
And I didn't say anything, and they came for me.
Then they came for me, right? It's exactly that.
Yeah,
and we are well aware of that, what that means. Because, like I said, I mean, like I directly know people who are currently leaving because they have to.
Yeah.
Like, it's not far removed at all.
No, and I know one family with 2 trans kids, and they have moved.
Yeah.
Moved from the state they were in to a state where they feel safer. Yeah, it's interesting. It's I absolutely felt during the course of producing this series increasing anxiety, and felt the need in this final episode, the epilogue, to draw direct line and warning and say, we can't let their warnings go unheeded. They shared these stories for a reason.
Yeah, but it is, like I said, it's crazy to live it,
yes,
and to hear it.
Yeah,
and like you said, I think the empathy piece is huge, right? To feel that empathy for these people, where you're like, I completely understand.
Yeah,
everything you're saying right now.
Yeah, one of the exciting things about this new series is giving me an opportunity to speak in places that I did not have the opportunity before. I'm speaking in London next week, and then I'm going to Copenhagen and speaking at the Jewish Museum there. 2 museums in New York, but the Museum of Jewish Remembrance, and I always forget it's such a long name, but there's a big museum here around the Holocaust and Jewish history, and I've just been invited to speak there, and to be able to bring our history, our LGBTQ history, into this space where we normally don't have a chance to talk about the experiences of our people is a real privilege. And people are also hungry for this history, which is exciting.
I think too, just like that lens is so important. Like I was saying before, like our voices, our stories, but like also knowing that like our stories exist in every piece of history, right? Like, as you know, this like overarching, like pretty horrible history, right? We were there. Like, of course, like you're talking about like the AIDS crisis, like that's like our history, right? But there's the Holocaust, and also gay people were there, right? Like,
and there's the Black Civil Rights
history.
Movement, and Bayard Rustin was the principal architect of the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, gay and out, which is why he's not taught in schools. Yeah, our stories are throughout, and that's one of the, we've recently released a suite of 14 lessons anchored by Making Gay History podcast episodes and created by National Education Association teachers. And the lessons are meant to be used in a range of classes, not just during LGBTQ History Month. We learn about gay people. The way we've structured the website, you can filter for different possible ways in which to use the lessons in English class, in psychology class, in research class. One teacher taught their lesson in a class on satire. So, I mean, at a moment when there are places where you can't say gay, we have released these lessons for teachers to use in their classrooms where they can still say gay.
I love that. Yeah, we were going to ask about that too. Like, so you're using these resources in like high schools and elementary schools and like wherever.
Middle and high schools and colleges and universities. And I just found out because I spoke in Bethesda, Maryland last weekend at a social justice fair at Walt Whitman High School in Bethesda, Maryland. A couple of the students, Addison and Sylvia, and their teacher Cheryl, created a 9-course social justice program. It's a concentration elective. One of the courses is on LGBTQ history, where Making Gay History is used a lot. I had no idea. And this fair was incredible. The audience was amazing. The students, Addison, who's going to college next year in Bloomington, Indiana, to study nonprofit organizational management, had listened to the Making Gay History podcast series twice, all of the episodes.
That's amazing.
It is. And that's becoming, so our nonprofit organization is focused on bringing LGBTQ history into the classroom. And we're expanding those efforts and also building an infrastructure to support the teachers who want to teach these courses, because most of them have no background in our history, even if they're LGBTQ themselves, and also can face pushback in their classrooms from not often students, but students who go home and mention it to their parents, who mention it to the principal, who mentions it to the superintendent.
That is amazing stuff that you're doing, for sure.
Thank you.
Lee, are we ready for our Q and Gay? What do you think?
I think we're ready.
All right.
For your Q and Gay? Oh boy, okay.
Question number 1. What is your favorite way to learn about history? A, books, B, movies, or C, podcasts?
Podcasts.
Easy answer. Huh?
There's no wrong answer, but the right answer is podcast.
Podcasts. Yes. I do like movies as well, but I love, one of my favorites is the Briggs Initiative series and Slate, the Slow Burn series. Christina Cauterucci did this incredible series. Or Pack One Bag, about a Jewish Italian family and how they got separated by the war, World War II. Fantastic. I love podcasts for history.
Okay, question 2. Again, no wrong answer. Pick a form of queer resistance. A, queer joy. B, queer community. C, queer outfits. Or D, queer sex.
Oh, that's a really tough one. Different stages of life. When I was younger, I would have said queer sex. Now I would say community and joy.
Yes.
But I can tell you when I was 17 years old.
Yeah, weren't we all? Active resistance, yes.
There you go.
Yeah, oh my God.
To be fair, it is an act of resistance, but it is funny. All right, question number 3. Do you think history is A, linear, B, cyclical, or C, Jeremy Bearimy?
Jeremy Bearimy? What is that?
Do you know what that's from? Yeah,
No.
Did you watch The Good Place?
Yeah, so it's from a TV show called The Good Place.
No.
And it's I don't even know how to explain it.
It's all set in the afterlife.
You watch it, it's a great
at
show.
one point, the guy who's sort of running their section of the afterlife tries to explain how he's like, time's more complicated than that. It's actually, like, people think it's a circle, but it's actually a Jeremy Bearimy. And he sort of writes out in cursive, like, the name Jeremy Bearimy. And then they try to explain how time operates as
I would say history is messy and there's nothing new.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
A Jeremy Bearimy, then.
Yeah, it's a
I think it's Jeremy Bearimy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question 4. How's your anxiety right now? A, bad. B, not great. C, terrible. Or D, my therapist is on speed dial.
Okay. I had been in therapy for 31 years when I ended therapy 2 years ago, happily, with the same therapist. We had a good 31-year run. And then the election, doing my Holocaust work, our house getting flooded, and I called my therapist.
There you go.
And we had...
Proud of you. Snaps for that.
Yeah. I was depressed.
Every gay person deserves a therapist right now. I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I actually just had a wrap-up session last week. So I'm okay. I'm okay. I would have thought that I would be super, super anxious right now. And actually, it's my husband who's been having more problems with anxiety, and he is not prone to anxiety at all. I am the anxious Jew. He is the calm Midwesterner.
But it's never too late to pick it up, you know?
It's too late to pick up some gay anxiety.
And it's interesting in life that things change over time. And I also know from my work that it could be worse.
Yeah.
You know, as challenging as it is now, it could be worse. And my hope is that this is more like, in terms of the pushback against us and against trans people in particular, that I hope it's more like what happened with Anita Bryant in 1977 and subsequent backlashes when we have come out stronger every time. And I still feel confident that that's going to happen, that we will be stronger and more resilient. We have such an infrastructure now that we didn't have in 1977. Lambda Legal they did exist in 77, but they were a tiny organization. Now they're a huge legal organization, very well funded. PFLAG has 400 chapters across the U.S. We have podcasts.
Yeah.
We have families.
Most importantly.
Yeah. And
can't get us when we have podcasts.
And don't mess with people's families.
I think I really hope that I can keep your optimism after this episode. I appreciate that. Question number 5. Here we go. Final question. Where are you at in your exit plan? A, haven't thought about it yet. B, got my passport. C, put in applications. Or D, already left.
So we hired a consultant in Uruguay to work with our papers to get permanent residency. And we have to go back on December 1 for 3 months. We've already had our health tests there. We were just in Uruguay. I hope we don't have to have a real exit plan. Coincidentally, the woman we're renting from in Uruguay is Jewish. Her family fled to Uruguay before the war. I've met with, and there's 5 minutes from where we rented an apartment is a Jewish community center in Montevideo, the capital, which was built in the 60s. And I met Jewish people whose families came there decades ago. So yeah, we're beginning, and we just hope that we're not too late. We hope never to have to implement it. And while we're here, we're fighting. So the big protest this Saturday, April 5th, we will be upstate where we have a house. And I said to my husband last week, why don't we sponsor a bus to go to Albany? We're about 30 minutes from Albany. A lot of our friends are older and would likely not go because of traffic and parking and all of that. And he said, that's a great idea. So we partnered with the Chatham Dems, the Democratic group in our community. We rented a bus. We have filled the bus, and we have a wait list that is growing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you going to get a second bus?
If we had more time, we would have. But no, one will be enough. This is an experiment. This is the first time we're doing anything like this. I think if we had started earlier, we would have easily filled 2 buses.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we have to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not running, but just in case. So was it D is the exit plan, or no, D is running away already?
C is you've put in applications.
Yep.
I would say you're somewhere in there.
We are. We're at C.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a really interesting, not necessarily the most,
uplifting
discussion, but I think
honestly so important and timely.
Important and timely one. Please let our listeners know, where can they find you on all the social medias? Where can they find your podcast and all the things that you're doing?
You can find us at makinggayhistory.org. You can find our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, but if you go to our website, you also get full transcripts, episode notes, archival photos, and you can also find all our seasons on the website. We are on all social media, as everybody else is. Facebook, no longer on Twitter X. We're on Blue Sky. And we are on Instagram, where we have 22,000 followers. And we are on LinkedIn. And I keep fantasizing about getting off of all social media, but you still have to have it. And for anyone who, depending on when you're releasing this, I'll be in London speaking at the Association for Jewish Refugees on the 9th of April and 15th of April at the Danish Jewish Museum.
Love it.
Yep.
Thank you so much for spending time with us, Eric.
Thank you both. This has been Gay Joy.
Gay joy.
Gay Joy. Thanks so much.
Yes.
We love hearing from all of you. We love continuing to build this community, and we just want to shout out some of our favorite things every episode. And this week, I need to shout out a listener on TikTok, Ash, who commented on our latest TikTok from our episode with Mari on Conclave, and wanted to shout out all of these divas. And listen, we all know, of course I know, that meant Ellie, but I'm just honored to be nominated, honestly. So thank you, Ash. Thank you for the comment. Thank you for everyone who enjoyed that episode with Mari. We had such a good time talking about Conclave.
As always, I want to thank our Lesbian Jesus patrons, Mark Foster,
Lizette Stye,
Katie Benitez,
Sophia Phillips,
and Armani Gucci.
And our King Princess patrons, Amy and Ellen.
And Andrew Doucette, thank you so much. Our Patreon is our biggest supporter of the show and helps us keep making it.
Remember, you can also find us on all social medias. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, and TikTok at Lez Hang Out Pod.
You can email us at lezhangoutpod@gmail.com.
And you can check out our website at lezhangoutpod.com.
Whatever app you use for podcasts, make sure you subscribe to be the first to know when new episodes drop.
We also have videos going up on our YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe at youtube.com/lezhangoutpod to catch them.
Lez Hang Out is an independently produced show hosted by us with audio production by me. Our production assistant is Krista Murison, and other podcasting shenanigans by Lee Holmes Foster.
If you want to help support the podcast, the first thing you can do, it is free, it is easy. You can leave us a rating and a review on whatever app you use to listen to podcasts. It helps new people find the show.
If you want to support us on Patreon, you can join at bit.ly/LezPatreon. We have 1 million. We have quite a few Patreon bonus episodes up there, so if you're like, I need more Lez Hang Out content.
If you want to get some Lez Hang Out merch, you can find all of our designs up on our store, on our website. We have all sorts of new things that have gone up, like our cups and mugs and travel mugs and hats and dad hats and all sorts of fun stuff. You can find that at bit.ly/LezShop.
And remember, we have a queer production company making queer podcast musicals with guaranteed happy endings. You can find everywhere at $beanprod.
You can also check out our website, dollarbeanproductions.com.
You can listen to all the episodes of our first show, The Flame, on any podcasting app, and our second show, Journey to the Heart, also on any podcasting app.
And if you want to help support us in making more musicals, you can join our Patreon at bit.ly/$beanpatreon.
If you want to follow us individually, you can follow me on all the social medias at Ellie Brigida.
And you can find me on Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok at LSH Foster.
With that, I'm Ellie.
And I'm Lee.
And let's hang out again soon.
Let's hang out.
I'm Amy Nicholson, the film critic for the LA Times.
And I'm Paul Scheer, an actor, writer, and director. You might know me from The League, Veep, or my non-eligible for Academy Award role in Twisters.
We love movies, and we come at them from different perspectives.
Yeah, like Amy thinks that, Joe Pesci was miscast in Goodfellas, and I don't.
He's too old. Let's not forget that Paul thinks that Dune 2 is overrated.
It is.
Anyway, despite this, we come together to host Unspooled, a podcast where we talk about good movies, critical hits,
fan favorites, must-sees, and in case you missed them.
We're talking Parasite to Home Alone.
From Grease to The Dark Knight.
We've done deep dives on popcorn flicks. We've talked about why Independence Day deserves a second look.
And we've talked about horror movies, some that you've never even heard of, like Ganja and Hess.
So if you love movies like we do, come along on our cinematic adventure.
Listen to Unspooled wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget to hit the follow button.